I wonder too, when you say this idea of like searching for that embodied experience,
Mhm.
as somebody who went to school first, right, to be a dancer,
Mhm.
how does that work? Because I feel like people who go and like pursue
Mhm.
dance at like a master's level degree,
Yeah.
have some sense of being embodied. But the way you talk about it,
Mm.
maybe you didn't. I don't know.
I mean, when I was like a ballerina, like there was a lot of ways you override sensation, you override
Yes.
Mm.
pain. I mean, I
Yes.
used to dance in point shoes, and like it's
Hmm.
incredibly painful.
Hmm.
And I was really good at overriding that and being like, "That's okay. It's for the greater good," or some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
Which the beauty of codependency, right there.
Mm.
Um, and Yeah, I think that a lot of us can move without being inhabited within ourselves. Like, certainly it
Yes.
makes a better dancer, but I mean, like, the amount of things we did, including not eating,
Yes.
starving ourselves to maintain a body image in order to have the profession, like, you can't be both present and do those types of things to your body, um, at the same time. So
Such a good point. My old roommate was a Juilliard flute player, and so we knew a lot of the Juilliard ballerinas. And I remember even at like my early 20s, kind of standing back and being like, these women are
mm,
beautiful. And like there was a
yeah.
lot of the word that's coming up right now, right, is Gabor Mate's hungry ghosts. Like there was a lot of that
Mm.
feeling. Um,
Mhm.
these beautiful hungry ghosts.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
We were hungry. And,
Literally and
like
figuratively, right?
I was hungry.
I was fucking hungry, and
Yeah.
most of my friends were eating toilet paper to satiate themselves,
Mm.
Like, that was
Boy,
the snack of choice between rehearsals.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I love that phrase that you said, a lot of us can move without being embodied, though. I think
Mhm.
there's something in that that just feels like such a broader conversation about the way that we move through life.
Yeah,
Just really profound.
like, we can go to the gym and you're like, "Yeah, I know my body because I work out." And I'm like, "No, you know a certain decibel of sensation."
Mm.
Mm.
And like stretch and pain are high decibel sensations. And more subtle sensations like emotions, the texture of a felt sense
Mm.
can easily be overridden by the decibel of sensation of stretch and pain and more sensationalist movement. So it's
Oof. Like
easy
sit
to
with
say,
that.
like, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about, I think Vanessa was telling me that you have a background in yoga as well.
Mm,
And I was thinking about like how much when I first came into yoga, like I was all about like the Ashtanga and like the like
yeah.
really like, like
Mhm.
fiery, like
Yeah.
power yogas. And then over time, like something shifts where there's just so much of a need to come into like the slower pace and the
Hmm.
actual like feeling the sensations in a different way. And I think that there's a way that we through the fire and the excess
Hmm.
and the big sensations are like outrunning ourselves. Do you know what I mean?
I do know
Totally.
what you mean. Yeah. I've done I've done the Goldilocks principle of that too, where I studied
Mm.
more like a Yangar, which
Mm.
we would hold a headstand for 10 minutes
Mhm.
or
Yes.
like a downward dog for 8 minutes. And it's like there's a lot of room to feel
Mhm.
or avoid,
Mhm.
depending
Mm.
on your cup of tea. Mine was avoid. But also at times to feel.
Mm.
And after a while, like I was just so saturated and so inside the sensation so much that I like forgot how to move.
Hmm.
I forgot how to
Mm.
action the feelings and the impulses that existed and were arising in me too. And so like there's
Mm.
something about that's so important about being able to action.
Hmm.
That
I
sweet
love that.
spot, that,
That sweet
that
spot.
Goldilocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was my brother's here visiting. He's a huge football person and we were all talking
Oh,
about
tell him
football
I say
yesterday.
hi.
I will. I
We
will
go
tell
way
him.
back. We go way back to when we used to play football.
In between when you're a ballerina and a yogi. Right.
I'm like, I don't know. You guys are New Yorkers. I believe you. I'm
It's
like, this is
true.
real. This is
The
true.
Northeast, the football's in
Scott's
our
done a
blood.
lot. I'm like, maybe
I
not.
mean, this is very true. But we were having this conversation, like all the guys at the gym, and it's like,
Mm,
and this is why the NFL, so many teams on the NFL do actually implement yoga practices as
mm,
part of their as part of their actual training now, right?
Mhm.
I mean, this isn't nothing new. This has probably been the last 10, 15 years, but I think it's kind of what you're saying. It's like now they're probably looking at it from more of like a muscular science perspective, right? I'm sure they're
Fair.
not also looking at it from like the emotional depth that we are, but there is
Right.
something really important in that. Like if you're going to be the quote unquote best physically, it is important that you know the Goldilocks principle and understand the highs, but also like how do I move at like a muscular level, at a fascia level,
Yeah.
you can't get that from just being in the gym lifting weights. You've got to be able to do the slower, more like the minutia. You got to get into the
Yeah.
minutia.
Yeah. There's such a range, a scale of movement and
Hmm.
attunement towards movement. Again, like if we're talking about like that range of decibel of like what's loudest to the brain,
Mhm.
like what's the most distracting versus where there's more room. Like
Mhm.
we're pain is loud because it's meant to be.
Right.
Mhm.
Stretch is loud because it's needed to be for us to really calibrate where our bodies are in relation to space so we don't get hurt. And so, the more subtle things evolutionarily are considered are less loud because they're considered less immediate and urgent, even though as like therapists, we know like that's some bullshit,
Mm-hmm. How do
Yeah.
you
you
use
know?
that? I'm wondering. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people who are very somatic oriented in their work, and I would like to believe I bring some of it in. But do you find that
Mm.
all of this stuff, like when you're sitting with a client, yeah, I'm gonna go back to my original question. When you're sitting with a client, how do you bring forth all of that information and knowledge on the body into your work?
Well, I think it's about inviting people back to their primal language, which is the
Mhm.
body. So when we come into the world, and even before we come into the world, so when we're still in utero, our language of processing is through movement, is through sensation, is through breath. And when we're birthed into this air world,
Mhm.
um, we don't lose that language. It's not till we're like 2 or 3, really, do we really fully transfer into our secondary language, which is like English or Spanish or Russian or
Mhm.
German, whatever it is. And it's like, again, what's unfortunate in our society is that we lose the old and gain the new. So going back to that Girl Scout song, whereas
Mhm.
what's actually really important is that we maintain our primal language, which is our primal way of processing, which is that sensation, our connection to our breath, our movement, and continue it as we add other ways of processing and expressing, which include our secondary language of like again Russian, German, English,
Mhm.
Spanish, etc.
Hmm.
What happens is when we lose that primary language, we cut ourselves off from a deep internal wisdom
Mhm.
Mhm.
that then gets us in a lot of stuckness. So when I ask someone, "Oh, what's present in your body? What's present in your being?" When you're talking about this, it's a way back into that primal language where emotions actually metabolize and move,
Yeah.
as opposed to like you can't talk through trauma. You can't.
Yep.
Sorry, loves. Like we can't just talk our way through something. We have to feel our way through it, which
Mhm.
is that primal language.
Mhm.
Yeah.